Hey, true crime fans. Tired of ads interrupting your gripping investigations? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. After all, ads shouldn't be the scariest thing about true crime. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free-true-crime. That's amazon.com/ad-free-true-crime to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Are you a professional pillow fighter? Or a 9-to-5 low-cost time travel agent? Or maybe real estate sales on Mars is your profession? It doesn't matter. Whatever it is you do, however complex or intricate, Monday.com can help you organize, orchestrate, and make it more efficient. Monday.com is the one centralized platform for everything work-related. And with Monday.com, work is just easier. Monday.com, for whatever you run. Go to Monday.com to learn more.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to extend a personal invitation for you to join me and a bunch of other really cool indie podcasters in the beautiful Berkshires for the Berkshire Podcast Festival. This is going on the weekend of October 18th through 20th. It's going to be like this really intimate podcasting event with live shows, panels, meet and greet, studio tours, special sessions. It's going to be really cool. So here's a little taste of the lineup. We've got True Crime Bullshit, Generation Y, Crime Lines, JV Club, The Karen and Ellen Letters, Truth and Justice, Murder She Told, The Trail Went Cold, and a bunch more. I'm also going to be doing a live show with Alvin from Affirmative Murder on Saturday night. That's going to be really fun. This festival is also raising funds for the Northern Berkshire Community Coalition and DNA Solves. So your dollars are going to some good stuff. In addition to the event itself, I'm super jazzed to get up to this part of the country, especially because it is going to be prime leaf peeping season, people. Berkshire County is in western Massachusetts. They've got a really cool art scene, lots of excellent farm to table dining. I'm personally excited to do some antiquing with my mom because my mom's coming and just get some solid nature time in. It's going to be a really fun weekend together, and I hope that you can join us. If you don't have tickets yet, you can use code FALLINTOTHESOUND to get 20% off. And so to buy those tickets, to see who's coming, to see the lineup and learn more about the Berkshires, go to BerkshirePodcastFestival.com, and we'll see you in October.
Wine and Crime contains graphic and explicit content which may not be suitable for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. You are listening to Wine and Crime, the podcast where two friends chug wine, chat true crime, and unleash their worst Minnesota accents.
And wrangle their cats from touching the open flame. Get out of here.
Your cat is a menace.
He'll never learn.
Ray is
He'll
a
never
menace.
learn. This is what Darwin was all about.
True. Ray will never learn. Bill wants to make shirts that say beans can't learn because he says that beans can't learn, but I say that beans can learn, so I want a beans can learn shirt. And then he'll wear his beans can't learn shirt, and then we'll just fight all the time. Anyway.
That's what you need in a marriage. It are two shirts that cause you to fight all the time, or that highlight your fights so strangers can ask you about it, and then it'll just start the fight anew.
Ask me about my beans. My husband and I always wear our beans shirts when we go to Disney.
I do need a shirt that says "Ask me about my beans."
That could for sure be Wine and Crime merch. Ask me about my beans and my trip that my husband and I took last winter to Walt Disney World, California. Just long.
No, that's
text.
Orlando.
All right. Orlando.
Ask me about our trip to Epcot and Universal.
Ask me about how drunk I got drinking around the world at Epcot.
Ask me how many Dole Whips I had at Disneyland.
Yum.
We gotta go.
Fuck.
I need a Dole Whip.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know what's happening.
You're Amanda.
I'm Amanda, and I was overcome by some kind of elder, boomer, married,
deep swamp,
Florida, swamp town, senior citizen. My name is Susan, the senior citizen.
I'm Lucy. I'm trying to stay far away from that, whatever that is.
I'm Lucy, and I'm just trying to keep up with whatever ADHD runaway train you're on at the moment.
I'm hanging on by a thread.
Honestly, this is how I know you're a fucking real one, because I launch into a bit and you're just like, all right, I'm in. I'm rolling with it.
But like hard same.
Well, duh. What are we going to do? Resist a bit?
I start singing a Sarah McLachlan song and you jump right in.
Somebody's got to be your backup. Somebody's got to do all the unnecessary riffs. It's somebody's job. Why not mine?
It's yours, babe. You got the job.
I worked hard for this.
You've been auditioning for this job
my whole
for
life.
25 years.
Oh, way longer than that. Although I know with my new haircut, I do look 25.
I'm just saying how long we've known each other.
Yes, accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what makes today's episode, to see how it all circles back, so fun, because we have another gal's pick this week.
We do.
This one's mine.
Yeah.
It's not fun like the one Lucy picked. I don't know why I do this to myself, but today we are discussing framing fuckery.
Mm-hmm.
And my God, framing shows up predominantly in law enforcement communities.
Ah!
Wouldn't you know it?
Same.
Yeah.
Ooh, turns out it's a lot easier to frame someone when you have all of the resources and all the access to all the evidence.
All the evidence.
Evidence.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the so fascinating things about the Denver Crime Lab when we went there. They were talking about like the checks and balances processes that they have to make absolutely certain that evidence cannot be handled, tampered with, fucked around with by law enforcement, and how challenging that process can be because this crime lab is funded under the same budget as the Denver PD, as most crime labs are in most major cities.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like your nonpartisan third-party science experts on the inside just trying to do your jobs who care so much about the integrity of every item that fucking walks in that door. And you're on the inside of that system and fighting against that system. It was really fascinating.
And you're being paid by said system.
Right.
Right. They keep the lights on and you have to be the one to be like, no, you can't come in here.
It just made me feel so good, though, to go on that tour, which was hosted entirely by women.
Yes, it was.
Oops, all women. Made me feel so much like I believed them when they told me things.
Believe women.
Yes.
Believe forensic expert women.
But the fuckery, the framing fuckery, man, it happens. Attempted framing in law enforcement, planting evidence.
Mm-hmm.
This shit happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That ain't no tinfoil hat. That is just the God's honest truth.
I think this episode could basically also be called evidence tampering.
Mm-hmm.
Because
it's the same thing.
In reality, it's really just you tamper with evidence, you frame somebody else. It's the same thing.
The same thing.
It's two different parts of the same process.
Preach.
So I'm excited to talk about this.
Yeah, me too.
Amanda, you want to get us going with our wine crime pairing for framing fuckery?
Why, yes, indeed, I do. And I'm going to start with a warning. My pairing today
is a PowerPoint presentation.
Oh my God, I wish.
Again.
Straight up, if I could do every case in PowerPoint.
That really suited you. I've also never followed along with one of your cases as well as I did when there was an accompanying PowerPoint.
I'm putting that PowerPoint on Patreon at the $5 and up tier so that people with the access to the video episodes can also look at the PowerPoint. Because it's up a lot on the screen in the video, but it's not the same as having that tangible PowerPoint, that powerful PowerPoint.
It's very rewarding. It let the story just kind of sing on its own.
I loved it. I am telling you right now, that's not the last you'll see of my manic PowerPointing. It felt so right.
That you don't finish till 1:30 a.m.
Oh my God, my most creative hours. What am I going to do? Mm-hmm. But my pairing today is stupid. It's straight up stupid because I couldn't really find what I wanted.
Okay.
So I had to just make something
You're
and name
retrofitting.
I had to name it my damn self. So I pondered upon a cocktail recipe that felt right in truth, not for the topic, but for the weather at the time that this is being released. Okay. So like that summer to fall, you know, the leaves are turning, but you still get some of them hot days.
Uh-huh.
And it's perfect for sitting on the front porch and reading a smutty book.
Really soaking in the last of the summer sunshine rays.
Yeah, and maybe your smutty book is some kind of mysterious story about someone being framed. Oh. And maybe it's called It Wasn't Me. Oh. And then maybe that's what you name the cocktail. And then maybe you get the Shaggy song stuck in your head. And so maybe you put this cocktail together and then go down a little rabbit hole about Shaggy. And now your entire wine segment is this quick cocktail recipe. And then some information about the singer Shaggy.
Oh my God. I love
maybe you're
Shaggy.
Maybe you're off your meds.
You don't fucking say.
Maybe I humbly request you take your meds.
Maybe you better call in for that refill.
Girl. So I present the It Wasn't Me. And this is a simple cocktail made with gin. I would recommend Hendrick's for this one because Hendrick's is less piney in flavor than, say, a Tanqueray.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Hendrick's and tonics or Hendrick's and sodas are often garnished with cucumber instead of lime, whereas Tanquerays are often garnished with cucumber because that lime has enough acidity and predominant flavor to counteract some of the extra pine flavor. And Tanqueray. Is that wild?
So, yeah, I think you said that the other way. So Hendrick's is typically garnished with a cucumber. And Tanqueray is typically garnished with a lime.
With a lime, because Tanqueray has a more predominant pine flavor than Hendrick's does. Hendrick's is a mellower gin.
That makes so much sense. Also, I would love a cocktail garnished with a cucumber any day.
Oh, so delicious. So hydrating. You kidding? So this is made with Hendrick's soda water. I prefer plain soda water and pomegranate juice garnished with a sprig of rosemary. And if you want to get real fancy with it, you can plop in some of them creepy looking red ass pomegranate seeds.
Ooh, I don't
right
like
into
those.
That bad boy. I know, but some people do.
Okay.
Some people do. I like them. So I'd recommend in a tall pint glass full of ice, doing about 2 ounces of gin, but like, let's be real, pour until your heart says stop is
or
my
as
recommendation.
Desired.
Pour as desired. Pint glass full of ice, then pour your soda water over that to about 2/3 of the way to the top of the glass. Finish with pomegranate juice. Stir it gently so as not to blast all the carbonation out of the soda. And yeah, you can garnish it as you see fit. But yeah, rosemary, pomegranate seeds. Got one of them like reusable metal straws and copper. The copper color. Put that in there. It is refreshing. It's red and creepy looking. It's fucking delicious.
Yeah, that pomegranate flavor carries a lot.
A lot of weight.
A little pomegranate goes a long way.
It's not like a cranberry splash where the cranberry is like super watery. No.
It's thick.
That's why you want to do like mostly soda water.
Mostly bees.
Mostly bees. Obviously, this got me thinking about Shaggy as I worked on today's topic ideas. So I came across this article from AV Club that I wanted to share to clear up some misconceptions about the 90s smash hit. Shaggy maintains that everyone missed the real message of It Wasn't Me. According to Shaggy, his classic hit, It Wasn't Me, is actually an anti-cheating song. Today, Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, as this was written, bold and bald-faced cheaters without the sense to develop an alibi around the world have lost a sacred text. In a new interview, rapper Shaggy attempts to reframe the narrative of his hit, It Wasn't Me.
Frame.
Oh, there it is. It all fits. Explaining that the song's status as an adultery anthem is actually based on a big misconception. That song is not a cheating song. It's an anti-cheating song, Shaggy tells people. It's just that nobody listened to the record to the end.
The record?
It might be one of those things where like
fucking like it was like an opera.
It might be one of those things where it's the long, they'll call a single a record, and it's like the long full version of it that maybe wasn't the radio edit. I don't know. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Quote, there is a part in the record where it's a conversation between two people and you have one guy, which is me at that point, giving the bad advice. Like, yo, bro, how could you get caught?
Just say it wasn't
me. Yeah, exactly. And then at the end, the guy says, I'm going to tell her that I'm sorry for the pain that I've caused. I've been listening to your reasoning. It makes no sense at all. I'm going to tell her that I'm sorry for the pain that I've caused. You might think that you're a player, but you're completely lost. So it's a back and forth. So the first one is like, I'm telling her.
Listen to that.
Yeah, but we didn't get it. We didn't get it.
I mean, did we not get it, or did we just not care because it was just a catchy song that played on KDWB every 15 minutes?
It's both.
Good. I mean, great.
Shaggy says nobody hears that part. That's what the song says, but everybody's just caught up on that. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It's an anti-cheating song. No one ever really buys into that, and I keep explaining it to people. Then they go listen to it back, and they're like, oh, dude, I totally missed that.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
But what's the lyrics? You may think that you're a player, but you're
completely lost.
Completely lost. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's what he's saying.
That's kind of one of those
his
lyrics
friend
I was like,
who gave the shitty advice.
But in love.
Yeah, you didn't quite know it.
Yeah. The bathroom's on the right.
Yep. Yep. Anyway, that's the article from AV Club, and that was my segment. And I'm obviously super high, and I'm glad you liked it. I love all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
What's that other Shaggy?
Girl, you're my angel.
Yes.
You're my darling.
No, not that one.
Angel.
What's it? Shagalicious? No, what's it called?
Mr.
Boombastic, Telefantastic. That one.
Oh.
Mr. Bombastic.
Yeah. Oh,
that was my shit.
I love Shaggy so much.
He's got some bangers.
We got to bring him back.
Let's bring him back.
Well, he went on tour with En Vogue.
Get me Shaggy.
Get Shaggy. He went on tour with En Vogue in 2023, so I think he is back. But I love that that's like why this article came out, because he's like, I'm going on this tour and I'm going to be singing that song and I want people to finally fucking understand.
I don't want to be misrepresented. Misunderstood.
I don't want to be framed for being some sort of cheating apologist.
Exactly.
Oh my God, this is the most on-point wine segment I have ever fucking done.
Yes.
Holy shit. Well, while I'm riding that wave, should we take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors?
Yes. Shaggy for truth.
We're Shaggy truthers.
We're Shaggy truthers. Well, I am feeling kind of shaggy right now.
I did get a shag haircut yesterday.
I need a haircut, so we're both shaggy.
Get a shag from Shad. Go to Shad Stylish Shags and get a shag from Shad.
Maybe you'll get shagged afterwards.
Oh my God. Keep all of that in. Let's go to the ad break now. Bye. So just a couple days ago, I got a DM from somebody that was like, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with your necklace. I have like the gold paperclip chain necklace.
So cute.
Where did you get it? And I was like, girl, Quince. And they added that to cart so fast.
It's real cute.
I love Quince, and it has made shifting my wardrobe from summer to fall so easy because these pieces are so classic and they have so much more than just clothing. Like, I love their accessories. Quince offers timeless and high quality items that I adore, ensuring my wardrobe stays fresh and I don't blow my budget.
Okay, so I have shopped quite a lot at Quince, and I know I've said that before, but I get like targeted ads from Quince on my social media, and I saw a sweater today. It was like, restocked the boat neck cashmere sweater, and I was like,
cute. Never clicked add to cart so fast.
No, literally. So they have cashmere sweaters starting at $50. They have pants for every occasion. You know how we feel about pants.
Yep.
but they're very comfortable and they have so many different styles. They have washable silk tops. And like Amanda said, the jewelry, just the loungewear, just everything.
Rompers, they have so much cute stuff.
The best part is that all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. So by partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings directly onto us, the customers. And if you bristled at the mention of factories, I will say Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes, which we, of course, love. So I just ordered that boat neck sweater.
Cashmere sweater.
In the brown.
Oh.
I know I'm going to wear it at Thanksgiving.
Cute.
Like, it is not too early to start planning your fall wardrobe, and you've got to start at Quince.
Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials. Go to quince.com/wine for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/wine to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/wine.
So it's a new season. It's fall. We've had some changes in our finances. So I'm kind of going through all of our bills and sort of redoing our budget. And previously, that took me an Excel spreadsheet. It took me hard copies of bills and writing things down, bank statements, all this stuff. But now, this time around, it only took me one cursory glance at my Rocket Money dashboard to show me exactly what I was paying for, how much I was paying, how frequently I was paying. And a lot of things jumped out to me as like, oh, I really don't need this, or I shouldn't be paying this much. And Rocket Money just made it incredibly simple and easy to just take care of my budget from one place. It's incredible.
Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. So yeah, we're prepping for holiday season. There is no better time than now to get set up with Rocket Money. You see all of your subscriptions in one place and know exactly where your money is going. For any that you don't want anymore, Rocket Money can help you cancel them with a few taps. So you're not wasting your whole day waiting on customer service, talking to a robot. No. Rocket Money's dashboard gives you a clear view of your expenses across all of your accounts. You easily can create a personalized budget with custom categories to help keep your spending on track. So especially if you're like saving up for something special. Again, the holidays are right around the corner. I know that sounds wild, but like it's true. It's October, babes. So this is a great time to get a real tight handle on your finances and see what you might be able to move around so that you can have an even more magical holiday season. You get alerts if bills increase in price or there's unusual spending activity or if you're close to going over the budget that you've put together. And the new goals feature automatically saves money for you without you having to think about it. So whether your goal is to pay off credit card debt, put away money for a house, or just build your savings, prep for the holidays, Rocket Money makes it so easy. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate lower bills for you, sometimes by up to 20%. They automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save. Then you can ask them to negotiate for you, and they will deal with customer service. This is like a millennial ADHDer's absolute dream. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features.
So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/gals. That's rocketmoney.com/gals, rocketmoney.com/gals.
Welcome back. Lucy, background, maybe psych, maybe some sordid tales for framing fuckery.
I've got a sordid tale. Yeah. And not that much background because I feel like it's kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah.
We did our best over here. Okay.
Yeah.
So Merriam
Mirror on the wall.
Webster says a frame up is an act or series of actions in which someone is framed. So thank you, Merriam-Webster.
Helpful. What's framing, Merriam-Webster? It's that thing where you frame someone. Cool.
It's the verb related to frame.
Thanks. Fuck you. The
But
fuck?
she did tell us that the first known use of the term frame up in this context was in 1889.
Oh, dost thou trying to frame me up? My lord?
I mean, it wasn't really that long ago. And also, are we in London now?
I don't fucking know where we are.
I don't know where I am. According to Cornell Law School's L2 Code of Federal Regulations with that weird little double S,
The snake.
which MJ illuminated me that this symbol means sector when we're
Okay.
talking about law. Do you know what I'm talking about? That double S?
Yes. It looks like a snake. Would have been cool to know because I have never fucking known what that meant.
I know.
Never known.
That note in the notes that she sent me was the most informative thing that she sent me.
That blows my goddamn mind.
I know. And that's not to say that nothing else was informative. It was just like, oh my God. That's why it took me till I was 34 years old to understand what the sign for a British pound is. It looks like that weird little L.
Yeah, a little L.
I had no idea that was the sign for a
Currency.
British pound
That's so funny.
until really recently. Okay, anyway.
Girl. Are birds mammals?
They're not.
Yeah, I know. Do you know?
I said it
now.
really confidently, didn't I? Because I was 85% sure.
Those are good odds.
They're warm-blooded.
Sure.
They got hot blood.
Pumping hot blood.
Anyway, okay. Cornell Law School's L2 Code of Federal Regulations 11.440 says, a person commits a misdemeanor if, believing that an official proceeding or investigation is pending or about to be instituted, he or she, A, alters, destroys, conceals, or removes any record, document, or thing to impair its verity or availability in such proceeding or investigation, or B, makes, presents, or uses any record, document, or thing knowing it to be false and to mislead a public servant who is or may be engaged in such proceeding or investigation.
Got right to the point on that one.
It gets worse. An even wordier way of putting this, according to Title 18 of the U.S. Code 1519, entitled Destruction, Alteration, or Falsification of Records in Federal Investigations and Bankruptcy, reads, whoever knowingly alters, destroys, mutilates, conceals, covers up, falsifies, or makes a false entry in any record, document, or tangible object with the intent to impede, obstruct, or influence the investigation or proper administration of any matter within the jurisdiction of any department or agency of the United States or any case filed under Title 11 or in relation to or contemplation of any such matter or case shall be fined under this title, imprisoned not more than 20 years, or both.
I need you to know that I mouthed that along with you in perfect synchronization.
I'm so glad. With your lipstick.
I feel like my brain connected with a tiny wire all the way through the screen to your brain in that
No,
moment.
there's two little paper cups on either end.
Yes.
Stretching 250 miles.
A 5-day walk.
A 5-day walk. No, it's not 5 days. Let me check. Des Moines to Minneapolis. Okay, well, it's 3 hours and 34 minutes by car. Way less if you're Amanda.
Nailed it.
How many hours do you think?
Hours?
Hours. If I were to leave my house right now and walk to your house, how many hours would you expect me
48
in?
minimum.
Oh, it's more than that. Do you want to know?
Yes.
93.
Oh,
Oh,
that's about 5 days.
if I walked straight through, if I stopped to sleep, yeah.
Hey Siri, how many days is 93 hours? 3.88 days. I was not super far.
Yeah, I'd have to stop to sleep and eat and all that. But if I just hoofed it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
anyway,
it doesn't sound that bad. Okay. Also, I should preface that I've been watching The Terror on Netflix, which I just told Amanda about. Yeah. And they're like, oh, it's 800 miles to blah, blah, blah bay. Better get going.
And they just walk.
They just walk. And they're like pulling a boat in case they find water, which, spoiler, they don't.
Oh, God.
But the boat's filled with like all of their moldy provisions. Then like a bunch of people die and all this. Anyway, I'm not giving anything away. It's a really good show. Okay. Anyway, Hemingway obviously did not write all of these title code things. These are so wordy. It's so dumb.
It's shocking.
A related legal word to framing someone is entrapment.
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen that movie.
Mm-hmm.
An entrapment defense is based on the government's use of inappropriately persuasive tactics when apprehending criminals.
Mm-hmm.
Entrapment is generally an affirmative statutory or common law defense, and it has also been categorized as basically a different word for a frame job.
Yeah. I can't stop thinking of frame job as an FJ.
FJ?
Give me a dry FJ.
Ooh. Lube up for that FJ.
Some sort of sex act.
You rub them with a old wooden frame.
Yeah.
That's only yay big, but also rectangular, so it's not comfortable.
Ouch.
You got a couple 90-degree angles to work with.
We can do it.
We can do it. Just think about me in a bathrobe.
Oh. I mean, yes.
Yes. A terry cloth bathrobe.
Oh,
it's a little bit damp from the day before.
I would love a damp terry cloth bathrobe right now.
No. I can smell that from here.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's not much information on the history of F jobs or the laws that came up in this research without getting like a bunch of online forums because, of course, like a framing would be a wrongful conviction, and there are a lot of people shouting that they've been wrongfully convicted or their family member has been or blah, blah, blah. So like the whole point of being framed is that nobody officially knows you were framed. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there's not a lot of like concrete information, especially information that's reported by the government.
Right.
However, the Innocence Project came up a lot in the research. Mm-hmm. So we talked about the Innocence Project in, I think, our wrongful convictions episode. Mm-hmm. We interviewed that guy from the California Innocence Project, and it was so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So this was founded in 1992 by attorneys Peter Neufeld and Barry Scheck. The Innocence Project is an organization that uses DNA and other scientific advancements to prove wrongful convictions and get innocent people out of prison.
Mm-hmm.
So this is from their website, quote, "The Innocence Project works to free the innocent, prevent wrongful convictions, and to create fair, compassionate, and equitable systems of justice for everyone." Because if there's one thing we talk about a lot on the show, it's how fucked up our criminal justice system is.
Mm-hmm.
This organization has helped free or exonerate hundreds of wrongfully convicted people and helped to pass transformative state laws and federal reforms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of all I have for like what a frame
Right.
an F job is. But now I want to touch on something that I didn't, and I really doubt you learned about in school as we should have, and that is the man and his assassination, Malcolm X.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, in the like privileged all-white school we went to, you learned about the palatable quotes of Martin Luther King.
Yep.
And, you know, like Rosa Parks and Harriet Tubman. That's basically it.
I think you were lucky if you learned about Harriet Tubman. I mean, like learning who she is, but not like extensively. Like that's kind of more of like a fourth grade, very easily digestible. You know what I mean?
But that's like the extent of our education on the civil rights movement. And it was obviously very whitewashed. Very
whitewashed. And also Malcolm X said and stood for a lot of things that are controversial. And I'm not like a scholar, so I feel like even talking about this is sort of a minefield for like what I'm saying. We'll kind of get to it, but a lot of what he said requires critical thinking. There's a lot of nuance in there, and there are a lot of things that were just straight up inflammatory and not great. So that's probably why the public school system doesn't really touch on him. But I also kind of grew up like thinking in my head that Malcolm X was like a bad player.
Yeah, we were taught that essentially.
Well, I wasn't taught jack shit about him. But during COVID, I watched the Denzel Washington movie on him on Netflix. And it was like, oh my God, this like a lot of shit went down. There was a lot of consequential events happened because of him and surrounding him. And I think it's important to know his story and know his place in American history, regardless of what you think about like his morals and ethics and the ways he went about things. So Malcolm X was a Black American revolutionary, a human rights and racial justice activist, and a Muslim minister. He promoted Black empowerment and Islam within the African American community. And like Martin Luther King Jr., he was a prominent figure in the civil rights movement, though they had two very different ideologies. Like, for example, and I think the simplest one, MLK was promoting nonviolence and also like racial integration. And Malcolm X wasn't necessarily promoting nonviolence, and he was promoting the idea of Black Americans moving back to Africa, or at least, and in the meantime, having like completely separate, totally separate like countries, essentially. Two different states for white people and Black people. So I don't want to like align those two too much, but I think in the context of white women who grew up in the Midwest, it's like, oh, I never heard about him. I kind of thought, like, my perception was that he was the counterpart of Martin Luther King Jr. That's obviously very oversimplification, but yeah, really interesting. And at the very least, I would recommend watching the movie. It's just called Malcolm X, but I don't know. I didn't know fucking anything about him. Also, like MLK, he was assassinated. So here's a little bit of backstory with Malcolm. He was born Malcolm Little. He had a bit of a rough childhood. He was bouncing between foster homes. He spent 6 years in prison in his 20s for larceny and burglary. But while he was on the inside, he met some folks, started talking, began studying Islam. And so he joined the Nation of Islam, or the NOI, and changed his name from Malcolm Little, so Little being what he referred to later as his, quote, white slave master name, to Malcolm X. And a lot of people who were followers of the NOI changed their last name to the letter X, or a succession of X's, or X attached to a number. That was just one of their tenets until, I think forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think it's until they reach like a certain level, then they can choose their own like different name that's not their quote unquote white slave master name, but it's like a more appropriate name that's not just the letter X.
Right.
So he was Malcolm X. And here's a quote from him about his time in prison. Quote, "Between Mr. Muhammad's teachings, Elijah Muhammad was the then leader of the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
Between Mr. Muhammad's teachings, my correspondence, my visitors, and my readings of books, months passed without my even thinking about being imprisoned. In fact, up to then, I'd never been so truly free in my life."
So yeah, transformative experience for sure.
Very transformative. It helped him serve his time in prison with purpose. And then while he was still in prison, he penned a letter to President Truman opposing the Korean War. And then when he got out, he became a minister of the NOI's temples in Detroit, Philadelphia, and Harlem. He was like shaking things up in the Black community. And basically for this reason, if we boil everything down, it was for this reason. The FBI was on his ass by 1953. Mm-hmm. So going back to the Nation of Islam quick, the NOI is an African-American religious and political organization formed in 1930 with the intent to improve the economic and spiritual conditions of the African-American community in the United States. Mm-hmm. So Malcolm X joined from prison in 1952. By the 1960s, Malcolm had become so disillusioned with the NOI and also had some beef with the founder, not the founder, the leader of the NOI, Elijah Muhammad. So there's a lot that happened in the interim that I can't get into. It's obviously it's a complicated story because this is a real man who led a very public-facing life and a lot went down. Lots of shit happened. So fast forward to 1964. Malcolm had begun to doubt the leadership of Elijah Muhammad after there were revelations of sexual misconduct on Elijah's behalf, including extramarital affairs, which was against the teachings of the Nation of Islam, and allegations of child sexual abuse. So they then pressured Malcolm X to like help cover it up, like don't say anything, like be cool about it. And also Malcolm was having kind of increasing suspicions that the NOI was built on lies, extortion, exploitation, etc. So after he left, he founded the Muslim Mosque Incorporated and the Organization of Afro-American Unity. After he left, he was receiving a bunch of death threats from the NOI. And on February 14th, 1965, his house burned down.
Oh, how odd. What a
Very
coincidence.
A week later, on February 21st, 1965, he was about to address the Organization of Afro-American Unity at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem. His pregnant wife, she was pregnant with twins, and his 3 daughters were in the audience. Malcolm X. So I guess someone in this 400-person audience yelled, quote, N-word slur, get your hand out of my pocket. So that's what was yelled. And then people like turned and there was a kerfuffle. And Malcolm X's security team tried to like calm down the situation. While this kerfuffle was happening, someone went up on stage, approached Malcolm, and shot him in the chest with a sawed-off shotgun.
Oh, my God.
And then immediately after that, 2 other men then ran up to the stage and fired as well with semi-automatic handguns. So he was ambushed. He was fatally shot. He was shot a total of 21 times.
My God.
Which includes all the extra like buckshot from the shotgun. But like he was fucked up. And it was right in front of his little girls and his wife.
Oh, my God.
He was 39 years old. In the days after the assassination, 3 men... Okay, this gets a little bit confusing because all 3 of these men go by 2 different names. I'm going to use their... This sounds bad. I'm going to use their white slave bastard names.
Oh, God.
Because that's what all the articles referred to them as, and that's just how it is. I'm so sorry. So Talmadge Hire, also known as Thomas Hagen, and was later known as Mujahideen Abdul Halim. So there's Hire. There's a man named Norman 3X Butler, because again with the X's, Butler, also known as Muhammad Aziz, and Thomas 15X Johnson, also known as Khalil Islam. So Hire, Butler, and Johnson were arrested and charged for the murder of Malcolm X. They were all identified as members of the NOI, so it would be like kind of logical. The NOI has been threatening Malcolm X. They sent some guys in to assassinate him. Makes sense. Hire was shot in the leg by a bodyguard and apprehended by members of the crowd as he tried to escape before the police arrived. The 2 other men, Butler and Johnson, were arrested a week later after witnesses allegedly identified the 2 men as the other gunmen. So Butler and Johnson were apprehended because of eyewitnesses, and presumably some information that the police already had. So
Okay.
that's why those two guys were arrested. Law enforcement at the time framed Malcolm's assassination as the result of an ongoing dispute between him and the NOI since he had left the group in 1964 on bad terms. During the 1966 trial, prosecutors said that Johnson, who had been Malcolm's driver at one point, was the assassin who fired the fatal gunshot blast. Heyer and Butler were said to have followed closely behind Johnson and fired their pistols. 10 eyewitnesses were said to have seen Johnson, Butler, or both, but the eyewitness statements all contradicted each other, and there was no actual physical evidence tying them to either to the murder or the crime scene. Both men maintained that they were innocent, so both men meaning Butler and Johnson.
Yep.
And offered credible alibis, which were backed up by testimony from their spouses, their friends, like several other people. So, in fact, this is what happened. At the time of the shooting, Butler had hurt his leg and was at home resting. And the doctor who was treating him because of his injured leg, this was not the shooting leg, this was before he just hurt his leg. That doctor took the stand during trial and testified that no, he was at home because he fucked up his leg
my orders.
and I told him to stay home and rest. Heyer confessed to killing Malcolm X, or at least shooting him, and even stated that Butler and Johnson were innocent and were not involved at all in the assassination. However, Heyer did not name any other culprits during the trial in 1966. So all three men were found guilty and all three were sentenced to life in prison. So 12 years later, Heyer from prison signed an affidavit naming 4 men who were not in jail, who were also members of the NOI Newark chapter, who he said had begun planning Malcolm X's murder in May of 1964. So he said that he had been approached by 2 of the 4 men and told that Malcolm had to go. They later met with the 2 other men and discussed how they would commit the assassination. So it's Heyer and 4 other guys at this point, none of whom were Butler or Johnson.
Okay.
This is according to Heyer. However, all of this information went nowhere for decades. So again, he provided all this information in an affidavit given to civil rights lawyer William Kunstler. Kunstler.
Okay.
Kunstler. Sorry, that's a horrible last name. I'm serving exactly what you are. Kunstler. Kunstler then obtained previously undisclosed FBI documents through the Freedom of Information Act requests that supported Heyer's account. So undisclosed FBI documents that are basically confirming that, it wasn't Johnson and Butler. It was these other guys and Heyer. Cool. Could have been useful.
Yeah, would have been nice to have 12 years ago.
However, Judge Harold Rothwax, second
These
worst
names
last
are
name,
wild.
rejected Kunstler's motion to vacate Johnson and Butler's convictions in 1978. And New York County prosecutors said they were unaware of or had never seen these FBI documents at the time of the trial in 1966. We didn't know.
Yeah, I was never provided.
Yeah. So at some point in 1985, way later, but none of this went anywhere. Butler was released on parole in 1985. So Butler's gone. Johnson and Heyer are still in prison. The DA's office didn't reopen the investigation until a 2020 Netflix docu-series called Who Killed Malcolm X was released. And also, in tandem, efforts by the Innocence Project renewed public interest in this entire case. People had just forgotten about it.
Yeah.
So this prompted Manhattan DA Cyrus Vance Jr., Jesus,
to
review the convictions. In the Netflix docuseries, historian Abdur Rahman Mohammed seeks to answer the many questions that surround the assassination of Malcolm X, even decades after his death. So at this point, it's 65 to, I don't know. I can't do math. 50 years? 50 years?
It's 50 or 60
45 years? Yeah, that's close enough. It's a long time.
Yeah.
So he's looking for answers to questions, including whether or not the actual perpetrators of his murder were even caught. Unfortunately, by the time of this reinvestigation, Johnson had passed away in 2009. But Heyer is still in prison at this point. Heyer reiterated that Johnson and Butler were innocent and advocated for their exoneration through the 70s and 80s. Many of these taped interviews can be seen in the docuseries. During the investigation, prosecutors said that new evidence of witness intimidation and suppression of exculpatory evidence had undermined the case against the men. The two men were officially exonerated in 2021. Deborah Francois, an attorney with Shaney's Law, stated, quote, Muhammad and Khalil's, so Butler and Johnson's convictions were the product of gross official misconduct and a criminal justice system weighed against people of color. Vanessa Potkin, director of special litigation at the Innocence Project, added, quote, the recently unearthed evidence of Mr. Aziz and Mr. Islam's innocence that had been hidden by the NYPD and FBI not only invalidates their convictions, but it also highlights the many unanswered questions about the government's complicity in the assassination, a separate and important issue that itself demands further inquiry, because the government had every prerogative in the world to kill Malcolm X as well as Martin Luther King Jr. So that's a whole conspiracy theory rabbit hole, and I don't think we'll ever really know the answer to that, because that is probably locked up tight with someone who's probably already dead. But yeah, of course they wanted him dead.
Right.
He was like seeking social unrest and racial reckoning. The federal government has every reason in the world to try to suppress that.
Yeah.
Even at the cost of just shooting him and framing at
Someone
least
else.
two completely innocent people. According to the book, Reversing the Malcolm X Convictions, How Far It Happened, How Far We've Come, How Far We Need to Go, by Joel Rudin, there were two main features that influenced the original outcome of the case. Faulty identification procedures, so like the eyewitness statement bullshit, and police and prosecutorial misconduct. Both of those men, Butler and Johnson, had solid alibis and even had Heyer's account exonerate them while also putting the name on 4 other people. There was no physical or forensic evidence to implicate them or even put them at the scene at this speaking engagement whatsoever.
Right.
The eyewitness accounts differed dramatically, and one of the key prosecution witnesses was shown to have denied a serious psychiatric history. So basically, one of those eyewitnesses maybe wasn't the most reliable witness.
Sure.
Neither the FBI nor the NYPD ever made a case against any of the NOI higher-ups, including Elijah Muhammad. So if the FBI was like, oh yeah, it was some guys from the NOI, that makes sense, whatever.
Yep.
They
Case
didn't
closed.
They didn't bother to investigate whether that order had come down from the top. They were just like, we have our guys who weren't their guys.
Right.
Sentence them to life, threw away the key. The main thing that went wrong was that law enforcement, including the NYPD, FBI, and the DA's office, failed to disclose evidence favorable to the defense, so like possibly exculpatory evidence. And this is known as Brady material, and you have to disclose this to the defense. The timely disclosure of this information might have led to the men's acquittals. The FBI and the NYPD had largely withheld all of this from the DA's office. Also, an NYPD undercover officer had previously infiltrated Malcolm X's security team and had provided an exculpatory account. There was an undercover cop there who was like, no, that's not what happened. That didn't happen. He was a cop.
Yeah.
And they didn't listen to him. They didn't, put any of his claims into evidence. The failure to disclose that trained law enforcement observers were present also deprived the DA's office and the defense of the opportunity to interview them and use their potential testimony. FBI and NYPD reports also revealed that several witnesses had named third parties as the culprits or had provided descriptions of how the events occurred, or of the shooters which favored the defense. So just like all sorts of different shit was not disclosed because they did not want any doubt that these 3 men had done it, so they could just shut the case, shut everyone up, close the book, walk away, not talk about it again, not look at it again, not continue investigating it.
Yeah.
In fucking 2023, the city of New York agreed to pay $26 million for the wrongful convictions that led to both men's decades behind bars. Also, the state of New York was set to pay an additional $10 million, so that totaled up to $36 million. That will be divided equally between Butler and Johnson's estates. Heyer was paroled in 2010, and just to kind of wrap this up as neatly as I can, as far as who did shoot Malcolm X, according to Les Payne and Tamara Payne in their Pulitzer Prize-winning biography called The Dead Are Arising, The Life of Malcolm X, they claim that the assassins were members of the NOI's Newark, New Jersey mosque, and those are William Bradley, known as William 25X, who allegedly fired the shotgun. So the first guy up on stage, and Leon Davis and Thomas Heyer, who we know had some sort of part in it. So that's what is believed at this point to have happened. Like I said, I don't think we're ever going to get a clear answer, but we do know that these 2 men spent a really fucking long time behind bars.
Wrongfully.
For a crime that they weren't even present for, and that the federal government had a hand in just shutting them up to close the case to not talk about it again because Malcolm X was dangerous. Anyway.
Damn.
So, framing.
I haven't watched the Who Shot Malcolm X Netflix series yet. I'm going to put that on my list.
I haven't either. But yeah, the movie Malcolm X with Denzel is really good too.
Cool.
Yeah, so.
Well, thanks.
My little shallow Dave.
Yeah. Well, should we take a quick break and then get to my case?
I would love that.
Solar power is the fastest way to increase Ireland's supply of renewable energy. That's why ESB is building enough solar farms to help power 175,000 Irish homes by 2030. These projects will allow us to generate more clean electricity, bringing Ireland closer to a sustainable energy future. Because we are, and always have been, invested in Ireland. Find out more at esb.ie.
علي الحماس مع منيو بيتزا هات ماي بوكس الجديد. 4 خيارات ماي بوكس تعدلها على كيفك وزيد عليها اختيارات ما لها حدود. اطلب ماي بوكس اليوم وخليها على ذوقك. بيتزا أو ملت كله بكيفك، وطلباتك الجانبية اختر 2 أو مشروب، خياراتك ما تنتهي. هي شروطك وأحكامك اللي ترضي ذوقك. منيو بيتزا هات ماي بوكس الجديد بشروطك وأحكامك. بيتزا هات اطلب اليوم.
Support for today's episode comes from OneSkin. Did you have a little too much fun in the sun this summer? Maybe. Hi, yes. It's no secret that UV rays can take a toll on our skin, leaving it dry, tired, and less vibrant. If you want to hit the undo button on UV-induced aging, say hello to OneSkin, which is your secret weapon against the summer's toll on your skin. OneSkin products are all powered by the revolutionary OS01 peptide. This proprietary peptide is scientifically proven to reduce dysfunctional, also called senescent cells. The science. A central source of skin aging. Their scientists have shown that it can actually reverse the biological age of skin by several years in their groundbreaking research. Healthier, more youthful-looking skin doesn't just look great, which we all want, obviously, but it's good for your overall health, too. As the leaves change color this fall, help your skin undergo its transformation with OneSkin. Their products work tirelessly to repair, rejuvenate, and erase the signs of summer damage, ensuring you step into this new season with the healthiest skin of your life. Head over to oneskin.co and explore how their products can become your skin's new savior. And for a limited time, our listeners get 15% off OneSkin with our code GALS at oneskin.co.
This topical lotion that we got from OneSkin,
the eye cream, get out.
Feels so good. Like, I don't know if it's just kind of psychosomatic, but I feel like I can feel it working. And I've been using it for about a week now, and I can tell there is a change in my skin.
I love it.
I feel great about it. And they also have studies to back this up. In a third-party 12-week clinical study, this OS01 face cream was clinically proven to strengthen the skin barrier, improve skin health markers, and diminish visible signs of aging. So, like, for example, wrinkles were diminished in about 87% of users.
That's wild.
And there really is no better time to try to, like, treat your skin from all the damage you did to it over the summer than in the fall, when you're going to spend some more time indoors, you're getting out of the sun a little bit more, you're giving your skin a chance to recover. So give it a little boost with OneSkin.
OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. OneSkin addresses skin health at the molecular level, targeting the root causes of aging so skin behaves, feels, and appears younger. It's time to get started with your new face, eye, and body routine at a discounted rate today. So get 15% off with the code GALS at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code GALS. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. We only have one body, one skin, and only you can choose to make it better. Age healthy with OneSkin. Speaking of important events, cases, assassinations, murders in history that I knew nothing about, this case is wild. And, you know, I'm an ACAB girly, but, like, I gotta reiterate, the cops are not your friends.
Every chance.
For this case, we have to go back to 2005 New Orleans in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina.
Oh, God. What a shit show.
It was, like, for our younger listeners who may not have been glued to the TV like much of America was at this time. I mean, I remember, like, the smell of my parents' living room in upstate New York when this happened, like, watching the footage of it.
I remember watching it on my little dorm room TV.
It was
in 2005.
Horrifying what happened to that city. Yeah. This was a storm of massive destruction that left the city in absolute turmoil. And it was eventually determined that, like, the levees had not been properly maintained because they were not provided with the proper, like, resources, budgetary resources to keep them up to date.
The fact that so much of that destruction was preventable is...
Yeah, just because of infrastructure not being a priority to the government for whatever fucking reason.
Awful.
And yeah, it wreaked havoc on New Orleans. There are still spots in New Orleans that have not recovered from the destruction. The response to this natural disaster was universally criticized as being slow and ineffective, as well as neglectful of the city's most vulnerable populations.
George Bush hates black people.
It's like the last sane thing that Kanye has ever said. Like,
True.
It's like the last time we heard a sane thing from Kanye.
That's the last vestige of, like, college dropout Kanye.
Yeah. There was a golden era, and it has long since passed.
It has.
But in New Orleans, poor, segregated, predominantly black and brown neighborhoods saw the worst damage, specifically the lower 9th Ward. Resources not only leading up to this were being hoarded and spent on, you know, what white supremacy has deemed more affluent and important neighborhoods to get resources. And in the aftermath, the same thing was happening. And there was not equitable distribution of these resources, which, if equity had been part of the equation, they would have gotten the most resources. They had the most people in distress and in need there, even from the evacuation and long after the evacuation, and the resources were not provided.
The footage that I'm, like, recalling of these neighborhoods with, like, people not even
They're
in
sleeping
boats,
on their roofs,
swimming,
waiting for rescue,
carrying their pets.
Yep.
Yeah, on their roof, spray painting, like, help
for days.
And that this is the whole swath of these communities. These are older people with, like, oxygen tanks and who can't walk, and
disabled people.
Everyone. Babies. Everyone. That was the most apocalyptic
It was shocking.
It was really shocking.
This was obviously a huge stain on George W. Bush's already trash presidency. When he initially launched FEMA to go help, they were like, okay, we have get everyone to the Superdome or whatever, that sports stadium. We have enough resources to sustain 15,000 people for 3 days. 15,000 people for 3 days. The entire city's underwater.
And that fucking dome was a nightmare in itself.
Yeah, it was so awful. Nearly 2,000 people died from the effects of the storm, and that
2,000 people.
And that doesn't account for street and state violence that took lives in the chaos following the storm.
Weren't there like white dudes just out with guns shooting black people?
Yep.
Is that what we're getting to?
No, but yes, that was happening. There were a lot of like outside agitators that were fucking coming into shit like that. I mean, that happens at every nationally televised opportunity. But different but the same. One such incident of state violence was the Danziger Bridge shooting. The Danziger Bridge is a vertical lift bridge that carries 7 vehicular lanes of US Route 90 across the Industrial Canal into New Orleans, Louisiana. So this is like the major vehicular through line from neighborhoods kind of outside of the city and into the city of New Orleans. I
feel like the 394.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay.
It's not a footbridge. It's a busy bridge for car traffic.
And a bridge over water.
Yep. And it's at this time is extraordinarily backed up because parts of the bridge, like the bridge itself is higher above the water line. So everybody was evacuating. Well, yeah, but like, you know what I mean?
The new water line.
Yeah, the new water line.
Got it.
Everybody was evacuating on this route. And people were like literally sleeping out there just to stay up out of the water and like make their way toward the evacuation route if they couldn't drive.
Yeah.
Like it was packed. It's busy. So on the morning of September 4th, 2005, barely a week, I think it was 6 days after Katrina had made landfall, the city had been experiencing a rise in crime, mostly out of desperation for food and supplies. But some incidents were certainly assholes taking advantage of the chaotic circumstances and doing fucked up shit. Like, I'm not saying that didn't and doesn't happen.
Of course
It's
it does.
It's just not the overwhelming cause of crime.
Yeah.
And even in these desperate moments. The details on what brought police to the bridge in the first place are muddy because they kept changing their stories. And there were so many different reports. And also reports on crime in general right after Katrina were way overblown and sensationalized. And the majority of these stories were about Black and brown people. So it was just a very racially charged, obviously racist reporting that was like making this nationwide thing. I mean, I even remember watching footage of like looters and the the news talking about like how out of control violent crime is in the city and not without the context of these people are starving.
Yeah.
No one is rescuing them. They've been hiding on their rooftops for days. They need food and water. They have children. They have pets. It's like, that's not the story we're getting. The story we're getting is all of these marginalized people are looting. Like that was just the standard. It still is the standard now.
Yeah.
So.
And it's like, yes, they are looting, but fucking wouldn't you?
Loot the corpse.
Burn that target down.
I don't give a fuck
if you need.
If you need it to fucking be able to continue living, it's life over property every fucking time. These people were literally starving and abandoned by every level of government as they're dying and drowning in their homes. Like, what? Oh, they're looting. Okay, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself.
I would have done a lot worse.
Oh, God. Of
and
course.
gotten away with it because of my porcelain skin.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
The details that brought police to the bridge are muddy because there's all these different reports. It's all, overwrought. But like even people in the area were like, yeah, there were probably reports of shots fired. And we'll kind of get to it because this was like a very marginalized area with a lot of drug activity, sex work. Like it was not a super safe spot.
There probably were shots fired.
So there
'cause
probably
everyone's
were shots
protecting
fired.
their literal lives.
Yeah, I mean, people are just out here surviving in horrific circumstances and like,
Not defending the gun violence, but like,
of course not.
of course.
it's just, this is bound to happen.
Yeah.
So they responded to, it's probably gunshots that brought them there. There were reports coming in of a crew of like alleged snipers picking off relief aid workers using the now heavily congested bridge to help evacuees and deliver aid.
The fuck?
This was the first report from the police. Then another report came out quickly after saying, oh, no, it was actually 5 men who were looting the aid trucks and, shooting at the aid workers. And when police intervened, the looters shot at us. And we returned fire. First, they said killing 4 and wounding several others on the bridge. Then the story changed again because only 2 people had died in the gunfire, not 4, but multiple people were injured. But that was their final story was we came upon looters, we shot at them, 2 of them died. That case closed.
Okay.
So according to them, they also weren't responding to just shots fired. They were responding to another report that 2 officers were down on the bridge.
Oh, so they were coming in hot anyway.
Yep. They claimed that an officer from a neighboring parish had requested backup in response to, quote, several persons shooting from the bridge and targeting aid workers on boats in the water below, and that 2 officers had been hit in the gunfire. They, quote, patted themselves on the back for neutralizing the threat and went on with their business. The officers involved in the shooting were Kenneth Bowen, Robert Falcone Jr., Robert Gisevius Jr., Anthony Villavaso, Michael Hunter, Ignatius Hills, and Robert Barrios.
So these are the cops that shot the 2 people and injured others.
Correct.
Okay.
They shot a lot of people.
They
killed 2 from in the gunfire. The 2 quote unquote shooters, according to them, like that they had rolled up on, killed were 40-year-old Ronald Madison, who had been mentally disabled since birth and lived in the full-time care of his mother, who was described as, quote, a childlike innocent who made a rare foray from home that day in a desperate effort for relief from the flood.
Oh my God.
He was walking across the bridge with his brother, who survived, and we'll get to his brother.
Wait, he was making a rare foray from home, or his
like
mother
Ronald
was?
No, Ronald was. Ronald rarely ever wanted to leave his house.
I mean, same.
Yeah. It's just fucking heartbreaking. The other deceased was a 17-year-old boy named James Brissett, who was on the bridge with his friend and his friend's family.
Just trying to leave?
They were trying to leave, trying to go get some supplies. I think one of them had left a wallet back closer to their home. So they were going to get this wallet and then leave because they had been sheltering in a motel that they'd been placed in that neighborhood. And we'll get to the description of what the conditions were like in the motel, where they were just cramming in hundreds of people at a time in these botched efforts to help evacuate or provide relief to these neighborhoods.
It's possible that was like kind of a local effort too. Like motel owner was like, we have a motel, everyone come here, we're trying to help you. But then it was like, 800 people there.
Yeah, it's just it's a tough situation.
Yeah.
Because everybody's got different issues, everybody's got different needs.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put all of that in one chaotic situation without the resources to really help them get what they need, it's going to be chaos.
Yeah. You don't have
under any circumstances.
You don't have power, you don't have heat, you don't have clean water.
The generator kept going off on the hotel. Wet. It's awful. It's awful.
I mean, not to be an alarmist, but like that shit's going to happen more increasingly with all this climate change, and until we do something to slow it down, there's going to be all these
a lot of people will die.
It's going to be this on a bigger scale, which is horrifying.
It's very scary. So Ronald, the disabled man, had been shot in the back. Jesus. The deceased and other 4 civilians were injured in the gunfire. All of these individuals were black. All of them were unarmed. Lance Madison, Ronald's older brother, had been with him on the bridge that day, and they ran for their lives only to be encountered on the other side of the bridge, and as well as being pursued by the officers that had shot at this other family initially. So like the officers walked up.
Fuck?
There's like a family of people who we're about to get to, the Bartholomews and their friends that are making their way across the bridge. And Lance and Ronald are like 100 yards ahead of them on this like little walkway that's been put in place for this evacuation effort.
They're
so that
just
people
doing
can walk
everything they're
and
supposed to do.
Cars. Yep. And these cops roll up, and we'll get to how they roll up, and come out responding to these reports of shots fired and just start shooting at the Bartholomew family.
Pedestrians.
Yeah, who are just there.
What?
So Ronald and Lance take off running, and they're like, oh, they're trying to get away. They're trying to get away.
Oh, stop.
And that's when they gunned down Robert and they arrested Lance.
Arrested his brother.
Yep.
For fleeing gunfire unprovoked.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Can't win.
And it gets worse.
Cannot win.
No. So they were met on the other side of the bridge, kind of like cut off by an unmarked police vehicle.
Oh, good.
And one of the cops that was in pursuit had like jumped into that vehicle to get sped up with them and cut them off. And Officer Falcone fired his shotgun from the back of his car at Ronald. And they shot at him multiple times. He later died from his injuries. An autopsy confirmed that Ronald sustained 7 gunshot wounds, 5 of them in his back. So they probably clipped him a couple times before he had a chance to turn and run away.
Who are we fucking framing here? What the fuck is that? This is so upsetting.
They tried to frame Lance Madison, Ronald's brother,
for shooting his
not
own
for shooting
brother.
him, not for shooting him, for being one of the looters that had shot at the other cops, the 2 officers down, which wasn't even a thing.
Which was totally fabricated in the first place.
Correct.
Cool.
Correct.
Just so I know I'm on the right page.
Yep.
Jesus.
The injured victims were Susan Bartholomew and members of her family who were walking the bridge to, like I mentioned, retrieve a wallet left behind in one of their homes, hoping to catch a rescue boat because the hotel they had been placed in was overwhelmed with drug use, sex work, and theft and regular gun violence. So they were trying to get what they needed to move to safer shelter when police arrived. Susan was shot in the arm so severely that the injuries severed her arm almost completely from her body.
Jesus.
The arm had to be completely amputated at the hospital.
Oh
it
my
wasn't
God.
salvageable. They shot her arm off. She said, quote, "When I looked, we were all on the ground and all you could see is blood, everywhere," she told NPR in 2006. And everybody's just hollering and moaning. Everyone had been shot and in pain. I look over, my right arm was on the ground, like lying next to me. It had been shot off.
Oh, girl.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a miracle she survived.
Yeah. How many arteries are in your arm? And
A lot.
yeah.
Her husband, Leonard, was shot in the back, head, and foot, but thankfully survived. Their teenage daughter, Leisha Bartholomew, was shot in the leg and the knee. She was like 15.
They're just shooting into a crowd of
Yeah, not even a crowd, like
children.
a clumping of children and their families.
Some children and their family.
Yep.
Because they're looting.
19-year-old Jose Holmes Jr., who is a friend of the deceased James Brissett, the 17-year-old. Jose I can't believe he survived, and he's so brave to have told his story because he's a big part of the reason why this case was solved. So Jose was shot in the abdomen, the hand, and the jaw, and also survived. And we'll get a little bit more to him in a minute here. So
this family was not related or involved with
Lance and Robert?
Robert.
Nope.
Okay.
They were just both walking on the same bridge at the same time, up at 100 yards apart.
I mean, not that it would matter if they were related. They were all completely innocent.
Yep. Lance Madison was taken into custody and charged with 8 felony counts for, quote, trying to kill police officers.
That's not a charge.
No. They were trying to pin this on him as well as possibly 19-year-old Jorge, who was still in the hospital and wasn't awake yet, claiming they had shot at officers and then taken refuge behind a concrete barrier and continued shooting before he was neutralized.
Ooh.
it wasn't until Jorge woke up in the hospital weeks later that he could finally defend himself, saying that this is not what fucking happened.
I'm glad he remembered.
Yep. And if we remember from what I said earlier, it was determined pretty much right away after this all went down that all of the victims in the shooting were fucking unarmed. So, like, no, Jorge was not shooting at the cops. Like, he did crouch behind the concrete barrier when you opened fire on his friends and family, but he wasn't armed, so he wasn't shooting at you. Jorge was severely wounded. He could barely speak. I mean, he's a kid. He weighed 110 pounds. He was hospitalized for 10 weeks after his injuries.
Jesus. And he's 19?
He's 19. He said he was just walking with the group when they suddenly heard gunfire from behind them. Quote, "It was loud, real loud. After we heard the gunshots, we just started running. Then we hopped over into a little walkway. This walkway was behind concrete barriers, the same the police claimed he took refuge to fire at them from. This was where police found him already wounded and bleeding when he said an officer took his assault rifle, pressed it against his stomach, and shot him again as he laid there on the bridge."
Oh my God.
And his injuries are consistent with that having happened.
A lot of these stories is just like, man, there were a lot of cops who were just waiting for this.
I mean, what do you mean were?
Yeah. I
There
mean,
still are.
Yeah.
Every opportunity. Why do you think fucking cops showing up at protests just like love that fucking shit? Create chaos and disruption and then just like go fucking have a field day on all these people. They love that fucking shit.
It's not every cop, but there's enough. It's enough that shit needs to something needs to change. That's insane.
I mean, the whole point of the all cops are bastards is like, no, maybe not every cop is actively hunting black and brown people, but they still are in a system that creates the people who do.
Yep.
And widely accepts them and
the
indoctrinates that ideology.
And the scenarios that allow for that.
So, like, yes, every cop. Because you're in that fucking, that pressure cooker of creation. It was made by design. So it's just like,
sick.
Rethink it. Rethink your job choice. You can take off the uniform. It's okay. It's never too late.
God.
So, fortunately, the survivors and community members who were on the bridge that day came forward with their version of events. I watched a YouTube video that I'm linking in my sources because it's quite good. And it's a quick, like, kind of 10-minute, but it covers all the really important points of this. And it includes some video footage because there were news crews, you know, all over the city getting what kind of footage they could. And there was a news crew, like, close enough to the bridge that they heard the gunfire and they were like, oh, fuck, we better get this going. And they started recording what was happening. But it was just a line of these men advancing on these people. Like, it was horrifying to watch. I like, trigger warning for sure if you're going to watch the video, but it's like, he did a really great job going over this case. As it turns out, these officers had arrived in a budget rental truck.
That sounds familiar.
None of them were in uniform.
Are you?
So, like, of course these people would be running for their fucking lives.
It's a dude in jeans and a polo running after them with a gun.
Yep. They didn't announce themselves or give any kind of warning before they opened fire at all. They were armed with rifles, including AK-47s, at least one of which was unauthorized, and an M4 carbine, because I guess it was just a thing at that time for working police, even like off-duty volunteer, whatever, like, because there was so much chaos in the city that, like, cops and former cops were just showing up with their own guns from home, loading into unmarked vehicles to do patrols and respond to incidents because they, like, some of them still work for the police force, so they could just, like, get on that radio signal. They're just cruising around in a budget rental truck with guns they brought from home.
What justifies that? That is
Nothing.
So wildly irresponsible and
it's horrifying.
fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, irresponsible is the nice way of putting it.
The National Guard had also been deployed at the time, but they have to be in uniform.
Oh,
there
good.
were obviously police
There's
in
rules.
uniform. Yeah. But, like, there were armed militants all over the streets, both in uniform and in plain clothes.
That's what we call a mercenary.
Yep. A witness named Casimir Gaston described the officers as lining up like a firing range. The officers opened fire without warning on the Bartholomew family, Ronald, Jorge, James, and Lance.
I'm shocked that only 2 people were killed.
I know.
Shocked.
I am too. From the Evansville Courier, quote, exhausted and emotionally drained, police cheered the news that their comrades had stopped the snipers and suffered no losses.
Oh, emotionally drained.
Mm-hmm. They came and gunned down people who didn't even have any weapons, and then
who were fleeing a deadly situation.
The deadly situation being them showing up there and opening fire on them.
Well, fleeing a fucking flood and then being met with a deadlier situation.
It's sick. Jorge was the surviving teen who had those awful injuries, was not charged for the events of that day, but Lance was.
Oh, good.
Despite going before a judge after sitting in jail for 3 weeks, and the judge stating himself that he, quote, found it highly unlikely Lance had fired on anyone that day, he released Lance from jail but didn't drop the charges against him. The investigation continued for years, and charges against Lance were eventually dropped. But the citizens of New Orleans wanted answers and justice, and it would be years still before any of the police in this case would see their day in court, and only because evidence emerged of a clear cover-up in the case. So what we know for sure is that homicide detective Arthur Kaufman, who wasn't present at the actual event, assisted the officers that were there by fabricating evidence that they had been shot at and were therefore acting in self-defense and corroborating they were responding to, reports of snipers going after aid workers,
down, blah, blah,
officers down. None of that was true. None of that was true. None of it.
Who
but
called
this guy,
in the first officers down call?
The officers down call was not real at all. There was a shots fired call because there had been gun activity somewhere in the area, but it wasn't on the bridge.
So somewhere along the line.
And then there's all these mercenaries
they ramped
and shit.
themselves up.
Yep. And there was one civilian that contributed to this misinformation as well. We'll get to him because he catches charges for it. But it's people fucking listening to police radio and playing cowboy, even if they're off duty or whatever, and showing up with their own fucking guns. And then this deadly game of telephone happens. You get each other all fucking jacked up to roll up on the scene and play hero off of complete fucking misinformation and chaos. So this homicide detective helped fabricate and corroborate those stories. And NOPD Lieutenant Michael Lohman, who also I don't believe was there, he'd been caught encouraging officers to, quote, pack drop guns, which are extra guns that they could drop at a scene to make a shooting look like justified self-defense.
Oh my God.
Which I didn't find evidence they did in this case, but it's this is a guy that was helping them cover this up.
He's obviously happened before.
Someone who had already said, according to obviously an anonymous source, that they'd heard him talking about drop guns to his team of officers.
Drop guns.
Yeah. So this led to new arrests, but on lesser charges in 2007. So they had made an attempt to charge them before, and I think nothing stuck because they were still investigating what had happened. We're conducting an internal investigation, yada, 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 yada.
Okay.
Then the officers involved in the shooting were taken into custody on January 2nd of 2007. They were indicted for murder and attempted murder. So this was the first time they got indicted on these higher up charges. Officers Gasivius, Bowen, and Villavaso were charged with the first-degree murder of the 17-year-old Brissette. Officer Falcone was charged with the first-degree murder of Mr. Madison.
Robert.
Those officers, as well as the NOPD officers Michael Hunter, Ignatius Hills, and Robert Barrios, were indicted on charges of attempted murder relating to the other 4 victims that they had harmed, but they didn't die.
Jesus Christ.
But on August 13th, 2008, so they were indicted in January, August 13th, 2008, the indictments were dismissed by District Judge Raymond Bigelow due to alleged prosecutorial misconduct. Bigelow found that the prosecutors had wrongly instructed the grand jury, improperly used grand jury testimony against 3 of the defendants, and divulged grand jury testimony to a witness in this case. The prosecution had to start again, but this time they did have some backup, but it was agonizingly slow backup, but now the FBI is involved. And sorry, I got my timeline a little wrong. So that in first round of indictments happened in 2007, but they were dropped. Then as the investigation kind of went back to square one was when people had come forward about Detective Kaufman and Sergeant
The drop gun.
Lohman. Yeah, the drop gun guy and the evidence about fabricating evidence in the case.
Okay.
So that stuff comes forward after the case had been dropped, and that's the only way that they could really bring them back for the same crime, because they would need new compelling evidence to put before a grand jury and do the process all over again. So 2 weeks after this case gets dropped, the FBI and the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice begin investigating the shootings, and U.S. Attorney Jim Letton of the East District of Louisiana vowed his office would take, quote, as much time and resources as necessary to resolve the case. In 2010, the investigation did result in a series of guilty pleas, so no day in court, from participants in the cover-up of the facts of the shooting. On February 24th, 2010, Lohman entered a plea of guilty to obstruction of justice in federal court. On March 11th, Jeffrey Lehrman, another former NOPD officer, pleaded guilty to misprision of a felony or failing to report the cover-up. So it's like officers that knew about it and didn't tell is misprision of a felony. Like you knew, but you didn't say anything regarding a felony investigation. I find this a particularly interesting charge because these kinds of cover-ups and like giving each other info but don't tell so-and-so are so common.
I had never even heard of the word misprision.
Yeah, and this is a charge we rarely see against cops who cover for one another's crimes. And it happens all the fucking time.
Yeah.
So I was like pleasantly surprised to see that. On April 7th, Michael Hunter, one of the 7 officers originally charged with attempted murder in 2007, pleaded guilty to misprision of a felony and obstruction of justice. Hunter later became a key witness in the case against Bowen, Gisevius, Falcone, and Villavaso. So he got charges reduced if he would flip on his buddies.
Flip, baby.
Yep. Fucker. On April 16th, Barrios was charged with 1 count of conspiring to obstruct justice, becoming the 4th NOPD officer to be federally charged in this case. He promptly resigned from the force and cooperated with the investigation. Then, this is a guy I referred to earlier. A 5th man, Marion David Ryder, a civilian who witnessed the incident and falsely presented himself as an armed law enforcement officer, was also charged in the case.
What?
Showed up pretending to be a cop. He wanted to play cowboy too.
Oh my God. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, but that is so fucked.
He was also accused of lying to the FBI about the event when he claimed that one of the victims had a weapon. None of them were armed, so that was a lie. Jesus. Ryder also faced a gun charge since he was a convicted felon and he wasn't even supposed to have a fucking gun. Are we surprised? It's always a convicted felon.
Oh no, you fucking moron asshole. What are you doing?
Why do you Call of Duty playing incel cop wannabe Rittenhouse motherfuckers always weasel yourself into this shit? Like, we don't want you.
It's so predictable.
The cops don't even fucking want you. No one wants you.
Paul Blart.
Paul fucking Blart, mall cop, Utcrass, stay the fuck home.
Oh my God. What a fuck.
What a fucking asshole.
What a loser.
What a fucking asshole. I can't. Such a loser. Like the biggest loser energy on the planet.
I can picture this man.
Oh, of course you can.
Unfortunately.
I've never seen a picture of him. I know exactly what he fucking looks like. I know exactly what he looks like. No question. No question.
Oh, no.
On April 28th, Barrios and Ryder both pleaded guilty. They were taking plea deals left and right. On May 21st, Hills was charged by a bill of information with 1 count of conspiring to obstruct justice and 1 count of misprision of a felony, becoming the 5th NOPD officer to be federally charged. He had resigned from the force the previous day. A former police officer stated at Hill's trial that he had used a racial slur in later describing how he tried to, quote, pop a round off at 14-year-old Leonard Bartholomew.
Oh,
Hills
target practice.
Yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Hills and Bartholomew are both African American, which opens up and did at the time open up a greater conversation that is completely out of my lane to speak on about. But often when you kind of get the like response to ACAB and like response to pointing out racism in policing, tokenization of like black and brown and officers of color is often a response that white people use. It's like, oh, well, that officer was black. And so that was present here. And again, it's not my lane to speak on this, but like, and not but, internalized white supremacy and how the police as a system will ingrain anti-black racism into their own like black and brown officers of color is a real thing. Like there are studies on this. That's all I feel qualified to say on that. I would seek out, you know, black experts and race anti-racism educators to explain this better. Like that's not my lane, but like that's such a shit argument that fucking white people use to be like, wow, it wasn't a racial thing because the officer was black. And
well,
it's
also
like,
because like racism isn't a racial thing; it's a social construct. It lives and breeds and disseminates in the communities that you're in. And if you're in a community of cops, your skin color doesn't matter as much. That's not your community anymore. You're a cop.
Yeah, your community is serving the fucking will of the state.
Yeah.
On July 13th, 2010, a federal grand jury indicted Bowen, Gisevius, I'm so sorry I keep getting that name wrong, Falcone and Villavaso in connection with the shooting and subsequent cover-up. Additionally, Kaufman and Gerard Dugu, the original investigators in the case, were charged with falsifying reports and false prosecution in the conspiracy to cover up the shooting. While the federal government, and again, cover up the shooting, they can't cover up that they shot these people because there's video. We know they did it.
Yeah.
It's covering up. The frame is in the why they started shooting in the first place because they tried to frame Lance initially and that didn't stick. All his charges got thrown out by the time these cops were indicted the first time in 2007. Like there was no evidence to show that he had done anything. So now they're like,
else.
Yeah, now they're trying something else. Now they're just basically trying to frame the American public into believing a bunch of bullshit that never happened. So the federal government lacked jurisdiction to file murder charges on the case, but they were able to file charges under federal civil rights statutes intended to enforce Section 1 of the 14th Amendment. So under Title 18, snake thing, Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. Anyone who acts under color of law to unlawfully deprive a citizen of their right to life may be sentenced to death. So it's like a very serious charge. So they're like, well, we can't charge you with murder on the federal level, but we can charge you with this, bitch. So on September 22nd, 2010, Lerman was sentenced to 3 years in prison. In 2011, prosecutors asked a judge to reduce his sentence due to his cooperation, but the request was rejected on the grounds that he had already been sufficiently rewarded for his cooperation. So he had to finish his sentence and he was let out in April of 2014. December 1st, 2010, Hunter was sentenced to 8 years in prison and 3 years of supervised release and was also fined $2,500. September 24th, 2011, Ryder was sentenced to 8 months in prison, followed by 8 months of home detention. He was released from prison on June 1st, 2012. October 5th, 2011, Hills was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison. He was released on July 11th, 2017. November 2nd, 2011, Lohman was sentenced to 4 years in prison and 3 years of supervised release. Prosecutors asked for a 2-year sentence due to his cooperation, but the request was rejected. He was also fined $2,500 in order to perform 300 hours of community service and meet with NOPD recruit classes to warn other officers who could be tempted to break the law.
To just go
be a
fucking
teacher.
Open range on people suffering from natural disasters. I cannot believe how light these sentences sound and are. And also $2,500. Suck my butt. Man,
I know.
that's like nothing. You just showed up and shot innocent, unarmed people who didn't have another choice.
None.
If that's not the definition of murder, that should carry at least 25 to life, regardless of what occupation you have. Unfucking real.
It's unbelievable.
$2,500. What is that? The fuck is that? I'm sorry.
Shit.
That number pisses me off almost.
Oh, it's insulting.
$2,500. That's like one of their paychecks.
Yeah. No, it's a portion of one of their paychecks.
No.
But yeah. On December 1st, 2011, Barrios was sentenced to 5 years in prison. He was released from prison on May 17, 2016. An attorney for the U.S. Justice Department described the case as, quote, the most significant police misconduct prosecution since the Rodney King beating case. Guilty verdicts were handed down for Bowen, Gisevius, Falcone, Villalvaso, and Kaufman on August 5th of 2011. On April 4th, so those are the ones that were like directly connected to the shots,
Like pulled the
fired.
triggers.
Yep. And all of these other folks, some may have been there, some may not have. So most of these other guys that were prosecuted just helped cover it up. And so they all squealed like fucking canaries to get all these super light prison sentences so they could just probably fucking retire with their pension, walk away with their pensions and go live out the rest of their lives. Judge Kurt D. Engelhardt sentenced Falcone to 65 years in prison, Bowen and Gisevius to 40 years, Villalvaso to 38 years, and Kaufman to 6 years. Kaufman was a helper.
So those were the ones that pulled
Fired
the trigger.
the shots.
Okay,
Yep.
that makes me feel
A
a
little
bit better.
Yeah. Engelhardt was critical of how the prosecution had been pursued, stating that he was, quote, astonished and deeply troubled by the number of plea bargains offered to other participants who served as witnesses. Federal prosecutors responded that the plea bargains had been a necessary act for them because this case had been so difficult and was essentially cold when they took over responsibility for the case. When the FBI took it over, it had been cold for, 3 or 4 years at that point.
Cold.
Yeah. Although federal prosecutors recommended sentence reductions for both Hunter and Hills due to their cooperation, their requests were rejected. So in both cases, they were like, you sentenced them to 4 years. I think they should only serve 2. And the judge was like, they're serving 4. Next.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck are you? Why are you wasting my time with this bullshit?
They still very much fucked up.
Yes.
And contributed to these men getting away with cold-blooded murder for a long time.
4 years and 4 years is nothing. So like, take your 4 and get packing. You want me to reduce it to 2? What is this, a fucking joke?
Also, you'll
Get
be
outta
out
here.
in 2 if you just behave anyway,
Probably.
you little bitch.
Yeah, shut the fuck
Shut
up.
the fuck up.
I can't. As for the victims and surviving family members, settlements were made. I'm not sure how exactly they were distributed because some reports just said undisclosed amounts, while others pointed out that the city the city had paid out $13.3 million on settlements. I just don't know like who got what and in what amounts.
Yeah. And also in my case, too, the state paid as well. It was like the city and the state. So,
yeah. So it's probably both. And yeah, I mean, I'm glad there was compensation to these folks, but like that compensation should be paired with actual like repair that breaks down the system of policing that allowed this shit to happen in the first place. Like people fleeing the devastation of Hurricane Katrina being gunned down on a bridge is like that's some sick shit. That's some sick shit, and it's happening all over the fucking world, man.
and you cannot say that is not racially motivated.
Of course it is.
Given the not to use
At
the phrase
the
black
very
and white,
least-
but like the black
Right.
and white circumstances that occurred in this case on this bridge at this particular moment in time.
At the end of the day, they were cruising around like off-duty cops, cruising around in plain clothes
And not
with
even
guns brought
off-duty
from home.
cops in some
Yeah,
cases.
in a fucking budget rental truck.
That's so janky.
Who responded to a call and wanted to go play cowboy, and it was in a neighborhood where they felt
BYOG.
that they could do that with impunity. And like that's where the racial and like the systemic racism gets to it. They showed up there against every like protocol, the very few that are already in place.
Yep.
Got literally guns blazing, thinking like, oh, well, this won't matter because they were shooting at us. We'll just tell them they were shooting at us. Because cops have gotten away with this kind of shit for fucking ever.
Yeah.
But enough people survived and spoke up, and there was, this is 2005. Not everybody had like a camera phone. Like,
I was
if there
just
hadn't
going to
been
say,
press around,
had there been had this happened in 2024, everyone would know.
Overwhelming evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, George Floyd. There was no disputing what we saw in that video. The world saw what happened.
Yep.
But yeah, so like we didn't have that. We didn't have somebody going live from the scene that wasn't that news crew that caught some footage of it in like pretty decent definition. Like there really was not any denying what was happening there, but it didn't include what all the quote unquote context that like the cops were trying to provide leading up to the situation. They brought cameras up when they heard gunshots, and they only heard gunshots when the police started shooting, and they had already claimed, oh, but we were responding to a shooting in the area and they were shooting at us. They didn't see that. That would have been a pretty key detail in the original trial, I think, or case, but we didn't have that. But yeah, I don't know. It's fucked up. I hate it.
It's fucked up, but at least, and hopefully the people who were responsible, all of the people who were responsible, and not only the incident in the first place, but also the offenders getting away with it for so long.
Yeah.
Have seen their justice come to them. So
I just hope they fucking never get a good night's sleep and have hemorrhoids for the rest of their lives.
Fiery hemorrhoids.
Hot.
So
that's my case.
Well, thank you to us.
Yeah.
To Amanda for this wine crime pairing. This was a dooze.
Sorry.
Yeah. And
but I love ya.
We'll be back next week with hopefully something a little more lighthearted, but I haven't looked at the calendar, so I don't even know.
It's anybody's guess.
Gonna be.
We'll see you then.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Wine and Crime. Our cover art is by Danielle Sylvan. Music by Phil Young and Corey Wendell. Editing by Jonathan Camp. Our production manager is Andrea Gardner. For photos and sources, check out our blog at wineandcrimepodcast.com. You can follow us on all the socials at Wine and Crime Pod. If you have questions, answers, or recommendations to share, email us at wineandcrimepodcast@gmail.com. Episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. It is the best way to spread the word. If you'd like to show your support and get access to all sorts of wine-fueled bonus content, visit our Patreon page. Cheers! This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance.
Fiscally responsible financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are the things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds.
Visit progressive.com to see if you could save.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Okay, it's official. We are very much in the final sprint to Election Day. And face it, between debates, polling releases, even court appearances, it can feel exhausting, even impossible to keep up with. I'm Brad Milkey. I'm the host of Start Here, the daily podcast from ABC News. And every morning, my team and I get you caught up on the day's news in a quick, straightforward way that's easy to understand, with just enough context so you can listen, get it, and go on with your day. So, kickstart your morning. Start smart with Start Here and ABC News, because staying informed shouldn't feel overwhelming.